what are 10 important core muscles that all beginners need to know about. That's what we're going to look at in this tutorial. We're going to ask a few different questions, and we're going to finish up by asking, how do we train them? Question number 1 is, where is the core? It's from the ball and socket joints of the shoulders to the ball and socket joints of the pelvis. So on a diagram, as you can see, we've got the ball and socket joints of the shoulder, ball and socket joints of the pelvis. Everything inside of here is the core, and obviously at the back as well, it's everything that goes across here. So we're looking at that central part to the body. Now what we're going to start to do is look at the muscles and how they work. Question 2, what are these muscles? So these 10 important muscles. So we've got rectus abdominis, or the abdominals as people know them. Now these ones are at the front of the body here. So you can see these are otherwise known as the six pack, because you can see the little pockets of muscles here. There's the 6, and if you want to call it 8, then you can. Then we've got external and internal obliques. Now on this diagram you can see the external obliques. You can see them coming down the side here, and all this is going to become a little bit more relevant in the next slide. So we've got the external obliques to the outside of the rectus abdominis. The internal obliques are essentially underneath the external obliques. So that covers off these two. Then we go another layer deeper and we see the TVA. Now the TVA again is a layer deeper, and it's essentially a ring that goes around from one side of the spine. So if you can imagine, there's the spine, the TVA acts like a ring all the way around. Then you've got internal obliques, external obliques, internal obliques, external obliques, abdominals, like so. So you can start to see the layering effect that we've got through the core. Then you've got Quadratus Lumborum Ql. Now this one goes alongside the spine, and essentially it's a deep muscle, or a deeper muscle. It goes across the pelvis, it goes up the spine and across the rib cage, and obviously that is on both sides. Now again, as I mentioned, this is going to become a lot more relevant in the next slide, but we have to understand this makeup first before we can understand what we're going to talk about next. Then you've got the Erector Spinae group and Multifidus. Now again, these are deeper layer, but they go up the spine. There's different components and compartments to it. Some start low, end midway. Some start midway and end just above midway, so on and so forth. So you can see that there are sort of compartments to it. Then you've got the lats and the traps. So you can see the lats coming down here, and then the traps coming around here. And then finally, I'm going to include the glutes in this, because we're going to include glute medius and glute minimus in this. You can include glute maximus, but it's more of a power generator, which is slightly different. And again, we're going to discuss that in the next slide. So what we'll do now is we'll take these 10 muscles, or these muscles that we're talking about, and we'll put a little bit more about how they work. Question 3, how do these muscles work? Well, we're going to look at these 3 bullet points to find out. Now, first of all, as I've mentioned, there are layers from superficial to deep. Now, in the diagram that I showed you before, it's a rough version of this one. But what we need to understand is that these muscles aren't organized as one layer. So let's just say TVA, then internal obliques, and then external obliques and abdominal. So they're not like rings on a tree trunk. They're not, let's just say, separate layers. They're all joined by a fascia material, or a connective tissue known as fascia. And what that gives the abdominal sort of cavity area, core, the ability to do, or the effect it gives it, is it basically connects all the different layers. So it's more like a spiral, like so, in so much as all these layers are connected. So they don't work as 3 individual layers. They work as one unit that are organized, or that can be shown in different layers with different depths. Because as you can see here, you've got the abdominals at the front, you've got the transverse abdominis on the deepest layer, you've got the internal obliques on the middle layer, and then you've got the external obliques on the outside layer, let's say. Then you've got spinal erectors, then you've got psoas, then you've got QL. So you've got all these different muscles, and they're organized in that sort of connected layers. I don't want to say it's a spiral because it's not literally a spiral, but all three layers are connected through that material. Now, what you should have seen from the last slide is the fibers crisscross your torso. So again, they're not all organized straight up and down, because that doesn't create good strength. How the body's organized them, certainly if we look at the front, you can see there's a crisscrossing nature to it. If you then put the transverse abdominis underneath that, it would be that ring effect that goes around. Then on the back, you've got the spinal erectors that do the same. You've then got the lats that come down across the side. You've got the QL that buttresses the pelvis and stabilizes the spine onto the pelvis because of where it's organized. So you've got this crisscross function, which gives additional strength to it, because fibers that go in the same direction aren't strong. So if we look at a plank of wood, all the fibers go in the same direction. So if we go across the fibers, or with the fibers I should say, and bend it, it will snap very easily. But if we go like carbon fiber, where all the fibers go in these different directions and create this lattice effect, then it becomes a much stronger material. And that is, in some respects, how we're building the core. And so the final part to this, in how it works, is the primary function is to prevent movement. So when we come on to the exercises next, when we're talking about how we train the core, preventing movement is the key to building core strength, but also maintaining a healthy spine. And question 4, how do we train them? Okay, so we've got these 3 points up here. So these are the 3 that we've discussed so far. And then we've got these 5 images. So we've got 2 exercises here, and then this is essentially the same exercise here. Now, this in some respects represents how we go about training them. Now, certainly from a beginner's perspective, we need to build some fundamentals. And when it comes to my online How to Build Core Strength and Stability program, this is the process that is used. So what happens is we take the beginner and we just build some fundamental, what I would describe as endurance, strength, and stability. So we need to build all 3 of those. And how we do that is just in very simple exercises. So we don't want them to encourage lots of movement, but what we do need to do is we do need to start getting these layers to activate. We do need to start using multiple muscles so we can create that additional strength from using multiple muscles. So the easiest way to do that is using planks, side planks, bridges, bird dogs, and other static exercises, for the very simple reason that they are simple exercises to complete. So what we can do is we can get the obliques working, the abdominals working, we can even get the glutes working, we can maintain the position of the spine. Because when we start getting through the program, we start introducing movement. Now, that doesn't mean, certainly within the first 12 weeks, that this type of exercise is involved in it. When you start getting up to the intermediate and advanced workouts, which are after the 12 weeks, these are the types of exercises that you get involved in. Because as we say here, the primary function is to prevent movement. So what we're doing is building that fundamental stiffness and the ability to brace the core so we can maintain the position of the spine through movement. So when it gets on to the latter stages of the beginner's program and then into the intermediate and advanced workouts, with this exercise, where it is dynamic and we are moving, but what's happening is we are moving from the ball and socket joints. So we're moving from the ball and socket joints of the hip and the ball and socket joints of the shoulder. So that's the part that's moving. I'm rotating on the hip, and I'm, as you can just about see here, I'm maintaining that position of the spine. And as the weight comes through, so you see I start the weight here, and then as the photos go on, I'm swinging it through. So it comes through. You can see my hips are in this direction. Now my hips are starting to rotate, and now they've rotated that much more. So you can start to see that the hips are generating the movement, and then the core, again, is maintaining that posture, creating that stiffness through the torso, so the power muscles, the glutes, the pecs, the lats, are able to generate their power and move the weight. But it has to be abridged by a solid core, or not necessarily a solid core, but a rigid core that can prevent movement of the spine, so it can then generate powerful movement. So that, in some respects, is how you train the core, and that is exactly what the 12-week program is set up to do. Starts off simple with basic exercises, builds the fundamentals. As you work through the 12-week program, it builds on top of that. When you get to the intermediate and advanced workouts, we can start introducing equipment like this, like kettlebells, like dumbbells, like gym balls, so on and so forth, so we can start to take the core training onto another level, into the intermediate levels and into the advanced levels. So if you want to get started on that, just click the link in the description, and you can get started today.